Duck. Who's there? Chicken.
Chicken who?
Buck.
That's wrong about him. It's not just about Down syndrome either. It's a film that asks the question, what kind of society do we want to live in? And who do we think should be allowed to live in it? And if that all sounds quite heavy, then don't worry, there is also some interpretive dance. And I should probably warn you at this early stage, I've never actually made a documentary before, so no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be absolutely... Hold on to your hats, people.
Happy birthday!
Oh, Ollie!
Happy birthday!
Welcome, people of Great Britain, to my life. As you can see, I have 3 very well-behaved, perfect children. They respect me deeply. They do everything that I say. No, on the page. OK, that's not quite true. A lot of it's to do with this guy. Hey, Ollie?
Yes?
Come here.
Yeah?
You say hello?
Hello. Nice to meet you. Shake hands.
No, Ollie. Ollie. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. Living with Ollie does present some challenges. But, you know, I go to work, I go to a sitcom, and I'm surrounded by mayhem. So I'm kind of used to it. Pose time.
Oh! Oh! No! Oh! Stop! No! Oh! Oh!
Amazingly, I'm not the only one who thinks this isn't a disaster. A majority of people with a Down syndrome family member are really happy with their lot. I was expecting tragedy, but I got comedy. And that, my friends, is where our story begins.
Hey, guys!
OK, to be more precise, it's here where our story actually begins. Every year, around 500,000 pregnant women come to a place like this to see their baby for the first time.
Is the heart beating there? The body? You can see the hands.
I've come to King's College Hospital in London to meet some women who are having their 12-week scan. So how are you feeling now?
I'm excited. Yeah. Seems more real now.
Today's the day when mothers find out when their babies are due and whether they're growing normally.
Hi.
It's also the day when doctors first test your baby for Down syndrome.
How old are you now?
I'm 40.
You're given a probability that's calculated by measuring the baby and the hormone levels in your blood. It's a bit like gambling odds, and getting bad odds is seen as devastating news.
The white line shows that as a woman gets older, her chances go up. Because you're now 40, when you came in the room, your risk was up there. From the measurements that we have taken, your risk has gone down from 1 in 69 to 1 in 301.
Okay.
This is so far.
The odds went down, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, yeah. I'm a geriatric mum, as they call it, so I want to be sure.
Yeah.
I want to have all bases covered.
I will leave you.
Thank you.
But thank you very much. Very nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the last 10 years, the number of people terminating for Down syndrome has gone up by 40%. Now, 9 out of 10 British women terminate when they receive a positive diagnosis. Of course, I have a biased opinion because I have a child with Down syndrome who I love more than life. But my big question at the beginning of this is, what's so very dreadful to the world about Down syndrome? So I was going to ask Professor Nicolaides about that. Professor Nicolaides is a fetal medicine expert and has been developing more effective screening tests for the last 25 years. Would you mind telling us more about why Down syndrome has been focused on?
From my point of view, The essence is that there is a demand, and we believe that the main objective is to provide women with information. I have learned over the years that for some people, having a baby with Downs is an intolerable event.
All I want to make this programme for is to say, you know, it's really not a catastrophe. Why is everybody behaving like it's a catastrophe?
Whether they have the wrong perceptions of what the condition is, or the system has not emphasized to them the goodness that can come from having a baby with Downs, I do not know. But it is a fact. It is associated with mental disability. And, importantly, they live for very many years. So if we think of it as a burden to the family or to the society, it is a burden that is going to last for a long time.
A burden that lasts for a long time. That's not exactly how I see Ollie. But legally, you can terminate a Downs pregnancy right up to birth, as Down syndrome is classed as a severe disability. And if you look at the leaflets the NHS hand out to mothers when they get the diagnosis, it does sound severe.
I mean, you know, complications, heart problems, gut problems, hearing problems, vision problems, thyroid problems, dementia. I think that just makes you frightened. A medical description will only list all the possible things that could go wrong, and it's not then compared with the list of all the possible things that could go wrong with a typical person. I mean, how would you describe yourself? Are you a chromosomally typical? Are you neurotypical? I'm a neurotypical person with 46 chromosomes who had childhood asthma and who has a family history of glaucoma. Does that describe me?
To me, Down syndrome is much more than a list of possible health problems. But that's because I know Ollie. But what actually happens inside his cells that makes him different? In every cell, there are meant to be 23 pairs of chromosomes. But somebody who has Down syndrome has an extra copy of chromosome 21. Chromosomes contain information that makes us who we are. So if you have an extra one, it means you develop differently. There are some common features like being a bit smaller than average, having a smaller mouth so your tongue may stick out, almond-shaped eyes, and some level of learning disability. But not everyone looks the same or is affected in the same way. Just like all of us, there's an endless variety. Well, not endless. There are now only 40,000 people with Down syndrome in the UK. But not everyone chooses to screen. And I'm about to meet a mum who's consciously opted out of the system.
So, do I talk to you and say, here we are at the house? Yes. Or is that like through the keyhole?
That's a bit like through the keyhole. We're just going to go off, like, Onut Trail.
Onut Trail, OK. Hi there, Emma. Hiya, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Come on through.
So I can't help noticing that you're pregnant. How many weeks are you?
28 and a half weeks.
28 and a half weeks.
The GP told me they'll want to screen me nice and early to make sure this baby doesn't also have it. How are you? It's different for everybody. For me, I don't feel like the screening would really tell me that much. I have experience of having a child with Down syndrome. So I did ask right at the beginning for my midwife to put on my medical records that I've declined screening and I don't want it to be discussed again. I went in to see a consultant at the hospital and straight away, first question, what are you doing about screening? So I said, well, actually, I've asked for it to be put on my notes that I don't want to discuss it anymore. And she said, yes, I did see that, but I wanted to talk to you about it anyway. It's hurtful. You know, I love Scarlett, she's amazing. Why wouldn't I want another child exactly like her?
I hate the word screening.
I know.
I chose to have the tests, but I just thought best to be prepared so that then I've got the right teat in and I've got a hospital expressor and all of those things.
Now, because I know the attitude of the medical profession, if this baby does have Down syndrome, almost to protect ourselves, I don't want them to know that, so that they can't then...
Oh, that's so interesting. You are choosing not to know, not because you would do anything with that information, but to protect yourself from the doctors.
Yes.
Who you feel would harass you.
It totally comes from their really lack of understanding of what it's actually like to have a child with Down syndrome.
Yeah. Yes.
Obviously, not all doctors are like that. But it's a bit worrying if there are some mothers feeling pressure from medics to change their minds.
If someone always keeps asking you something, it's going to shake your resolve, isn't it? So, let's say let's act out a little drama, because I'm also a screenwriter. Yeah. Okay, so we have person one. Happy pregnant mother. This lady is called Françoise. And Françoise is moving to England, and she has met, he looks cool, doesn't he, like Raoul. She's met Raoul. They're in a bar, they've got drinks. And biscuits. So Françoise says, "Oh, Raoul, you are English. It's very exciting to meet you. I am moving to England. I would like to move to Kent." Raoul goes, "Kent?" She goes, "Yes, what?" He goes, "Kent." She said, "But I like castles. I like tomatoes. I like all the greenery." "Kent? Are you sure? Kent?" "Yeah, why, what's the problem with Kent?" And if every time these two meet, and every time she mentions Kent, he's negative about it, because he's, you know, English, he may never have been to Kent. She's just going to feel more and more insecure about her decision. And I just feel that it's a bit like that, really. You assume that the doctors know.
The grand irony, of course, is that all this focus on screening is happening when people with Down syndrome are achieving more than ever before.
This is a whole pretend street.
Yeah, what's up, mate?
Britain's most famous pretend street, Coronation Street. And I'm here to meet Liam Bairstow, who's an actor with Down syndrome, who's just landed a 6-month contract, and they're just filming over there, so I might be quiet.
Okay, here we go then, guys. Stand by, please. And action.
You're right. She's lost her mind. She's fallen for a Scotsman and she's heading for the Highlands.
Can I buy you a drink?
Make it a large one.
Let's get drunk.
No need for that.
And we cut there. That's great. Well done, you chaps.
Cheers, Liam. Good luck. Thank you very much, mate. See you soon. Thank you, hon. Cheers.
Your family must be very proud.
Every time I watch Coronation Street with my mum, she can't stop crying. It's like every single time I'm on TV, she embarrasses me, like saying, oh, look at my baby son. I'm like, Mum, will you pack it in?
Do you feel that people see you with Down syndrome first, or they see you as an actor first?
They see me as an actor.
And how's it going?
Really well.
Fantastic. Do you love it?
I love it here. Part of my dream is getting like an award.
Yeah. And
probably get a girlfriend out of it and all. Which would be decent enough. That's all I want, really.
An award and a girlfriend. Yeah.
That's all I want, really.
Just like Leonardo DiCaprio. The opportunities that Liam now has are no accident. They've been hard won. People with Down syndrome weren't even allowed to go to school until 1970, and not allowed in mainstream school until 1981. Today, Ollie and I are meeting one of the people who helped pave the way for this to happen.
I'm going to meet Sue Buckley, who is... her name may not mean anything to you, but she is actually a giant in the field of Down syndrome, not just in the UK, but globally. She's done so much to change the lives of people with Down syndrome. And Ollie's not that excited currently because it's about 5 in the morning. But, well, you know, for me it's a big day.
Professor Sue Buckley has been pioneering teaching methods for children with Down syndrome since the 70s.
Mum, it's a fun treat.
It's a fun treat, is it?
Her research has led to a UK-wide network of speech and language classes being set up. Classes like the one Ollie and I are going to today.
Hi there.
Hello, Ollie. Lovely to meet you. Hi. And lovely to meet you too. My name's Sue.
Hello, Sue.
So I've got one for you,
One for you. One for you. Would you like one?
Yes, please.
Oh, there you go.
What we've learned is it's a profile of strengths and weaknesses. The simple message is learning from listening is difficult. We have strengths as visual learners. And just applying that has made a big difference.
Okay, let's do this, baby.
Ready?
Yes, go.
Elma.
Elma was vanilla, and orange, and red, and pink, and purple, and blue, and green, and...
According to Sue, nowadays some 80%, that's 4/5 of people with Down syndrome, could learn to read if taught in the right way. And so with the right support, the majority can go through mainstream schools, get work, and live independent, ordinary lives.
So, I mean, that leads us on to the question of screening. Do you have any view on the national screening programme?
We don't believe that a diagnosis of Down syndrome should be a reason for termination. Nobody's discussed it with adults with Down syndrome, many of whom can now read, understand the issues, and realise that as a group, there's a large proportion, particularly the medical community, who think their lives aren't worth living. But there was never and has never been a public ethical debate. Because I think there definitely ought to be a debate.
I'm amazed to hear that 30 years ago the government just decided to introduce screening for Down syndrome with no public discussion. It was the very same time that Sue's research was making inclusion possible.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you.
Since then, it's become commonplace for people with Down syndrome to go to mainstream school. But the science of screening has also been developing. And some are saying it's at the point of threatening the very existence of the Down syndrome community.
So what's about to happen with screening?
Goodness me, I'm so glad you asked, Claire. Well, at the moment, if you're an average UK mother, let's say you're 30, your baby grows, it becomes a raspberry, and then it becomes a grape. Now, at about between 11 and 13 weeks, you go for your scan and you have some blood tests. Now, you're going to recognise this procedure from earlier in the programme. This is a pretty good screen. It catches 85% of all of babies with Down syndrome. But as you can see, the odd Brussels sprout with Down syndrome can get through. The only way of knowing for sure whether or not your baby has Down syndrome is to have an invasive diagnostic test, which would happen somewhere between pear and grapefruit. And so here's one I prepared earlier. Amniocentesis is when your doctor would collect some of the fluid around the baby in what you'll recognise easily as the amniotic sac. Obviously, there is always the fear that that little pear in there will be harmed. But now, there has been an amazing scientific breakthrough. This sieve represents non-invasive prenatal testing. It can tell whether your baby has Down syndrome with 99% accuracy as early as here. So, what this is going to mean is that more and more women are going to know that the baby they're carrying has Down syndrome in pregnancy. And if we remember that most women who know for sure terminate, presumably this is going to mean far fewer babies with Down syndrome being born.
In the UK, this new non-invasive test is being developed by Lynn Chitty at Great Ormond Street. She's Britain's only Professor of Genetics and Fetal Medicine. I need to hear her take on the possible consequences of this new test.
My lines, I'm learning my lines. How has this new screening test come about and why? Do it better than that. How has this new screening test come about and why? No, that's too much. How has this new screening test come about and why? That's better.
The statistics for termination rates are complicated and disputed by both sides of the debate. But since the new test has been available in the private sector, the Department of Health has reported that termination rates for Down syndrome have gone up by almost a quarter. Professor Chitty is proposing that this new test be rolled out on the NHS, she's done a study and presented her research to the National Screening Committee, who will announce their decision in the next few days.
Hello there.
Okay.
I'm Sally.
And I'm interested.
Hello, very nice to meet you.
This is the HiSeq.
Oh, right.
So this is the machine which sequences the DNA. We have developed this test ourselves, so this is not one of the commercial companies doing it. We did that as part of the study to show that it could be done in an NHS laboratory, that it didn't have to be sent to America or wherever to be tested.
And the accuracy at the moment is, what is it, 97, 98, 99? What's the accuracy?
It's about 99. It will detect about 99% of all cases.
From the outside, to me, it seems like there's no distinction being made between Down syndrome and a disease. Whereas to me, Down syndrome is a type of person. So you wouldn't screen out, I don't know.
Can I just stop you there?
Yes.
Because you just used the word screen out. I do not think that we are screening out. On the contrary, I really do not think we're going to be screening out Down syndrome. And I find it quite distressing. I mean, I had a journalist phone me up and said, you're going to annihilate Downs. Well, I don't think that's going to happen.
So, well, explain to me why that isn't going to happen then, because the figures say the opposite, don't they, at the moment? So it seems that there's...
Well, you see, the trouble is everybody's looking at hypothetical scenarios. Right. They're looking at what-if situations. So one of the reasons why we did our study was because we needed to stop the what-ifs and actually look at what does happen in practice when you give women the option. So we found there was a lot of women who are actually using the NIPT test to find out whether the baby's got Down syndrome, inform themselves and carry on with the pregnancy. If you look at our statistics, small numbers, it will not significantly change the live birth rate. So I don't think you can say that at the moment. I think you have to wait and see what happens.
It's quite a high cost.
It's not a high cost at all. We showed very clearly that you can implement this.
Sorry, I wasn't meaning the financial cost.
Okay.
I mean, this is an experiment that may result in people choosing not to terminate and just choosing to know, or it may result in a catastrophic result on the Down syndrome population.
Well, the pilot study would suggest that it's not going to result in the latter. I mean, I think, so you have, how old is your son?
11.
So he's 11. How do you feel about, is he, later on in life when because he's likely to outlive you, so what does that prospect hold for you?
Well, I feel that, I just feel that the answer to that is not termination. You know, the answer to that is, if we have a society that is unable to care for people, then the problem is not the person. She was at enormous pains to say that screening wasn't a screening out thing. Oh dear, but it's still really sad, isn't it? It's just, it's just horrible. The reality that we live in a world where I don't know, I sort of feel like people with Down syndrome are a type of person. It doesn't feel like it, it's not a disease. And the type of person that Ollie is, but not just Ollie, the type of characteristics that these people share are so benign. I feel like you read encounters of Western explorers and the dodo, where this kind, nice, curious bird comes up and then just gets wiped out. And through not being suspicious enough or violent enough. But yeah, anyway.
I don't feel particularly reassured about NIPT. I'm worried we might be gambling with society's diversity. So what happens when almost everyone screens? Well, wouldn't you know, there's a place that can tell us.
What do we know? The thinking shot. What do we know about Iceland? Well, we know that it has lots of mountains and some ice. But it also has lots of hot stuff, by which I mean lava.
It's a land of contradictions. Here they provide some of the best care and opportunities for disabled people in the world. But over the last 5 years, 100% of people have chosen to terminate for Down syndrome. 100%. That's like everyone. If this is the direction that the UK is heading, then I wonder what it must be like to have 3 copies of chromosome 21 and live here.
Hello, my name is Halldóra. I read an article in the newspaper the other day. There was this woman who wrote people with Down syndrome should not exist. Who is perfect? Who can decide that we who have Down syndrome are worth less?
Hi. Hi, Halldóra. I'm Sally.
32-year-old Halldóra is one of the few people with Down syndrome in Iceland. Her story hit the headlines when she wrote an article protesting her right to life.
Would you show us your exhibition?
Yes, of course.
It prompted photographer Sigga Ella to take 21 portraits of some of Iceland's remaining people with Down syndrome.
I found Halldóra's article online. Going through her thoughts is basically saying that though she has a disability, it doesn't define her as a person, you know.
How does it feel to know that people discuss whether or not Down syndrome is okay to live with?
Getur þú sagt henni á hverju þú skrifa greinina? Skal reyna dálítið þungt. Hvernig þér leið með það? Mér leið ekki vel á hverju út af okkur börnum með Downs. Við eigum líka líf eins og aðrir. She thought that they were coming after her alive.
You are sighing. And whenever I met with the producers to talk about this program, I was doing that sighing. I couldn't talk about it for a very long time. It's great that you speak out. It's great that you say something.
Yes. It isn't always easy. You know, we have our ups and downs, and we have worries, but that's life. Life is up and down.
Oh, I've been wanting to hug you the whole time. I thought it was a bit forward. Oh, lovely girl. Lovely girl.
Halldóra speaks 2 languages, she's got a job, she's hoping to marry her long-term boyfriend this summer. It upsets me that she has to justify her existence. Imagine if you had to do that. Maybe it's because they're stuck on an island in the middle of the Atlantic and there's only 300,000 Icelanders to choose from, but they do seem a bit preoccupied with genetics here. I've come to a laboratory on the outskirts of Reykjavik. No, that's not me, but thank you. There I am. Somewhere in this building, there's a man called Kári Stefánsson, who now has enough information to predict the genetic code of everybody in Iceland.
Come in.
Hi there.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Sally.
I'm Kári. Everyone is interested in this kind of research. It is inherent to man to try to figure out as much about himself as possible.
So you can predict a probability of somebody getting good grades in school, of somebody inheriting various diseases?
Yes. The only thing this is going to do is lead to knowledge.
Let's go back a step and say, so the reason we're in Iceland is because you have a screening program for Down syndrome, and of the pregnancies that are discovered, 100% of the identified pregnancies are terminated. And in some people's eyes, that's successful. And
I'm not entirely sure that it is successful. The statistics is is earth-shattering, basically. I think it is. I think it is in many ways not particularly thoughtful. I'll tell you that the guy who manages this building, our janitor, Kitty, who is an absolutely wonderful person, he has a son who has Down syndrome. And there is hardly anything more beautiful than seeing the two of them together, because there is so strong bond and so much love. And somehow in our culture it has become accepted to abort Down syndrome fetuses, which I think is pretty merciless in many ways. I'm not entirely sure it's correct. Or the only correct thing about it is that I believe the woman should be the individual to decide whether she wants to terminate pregnancy or not. You agree with that?
I agree with that. I love that you think that.
And it's just, anything else is illogical.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're very serious about this.
Yes. Is that bad?
No, that's good. I actually like that. This is one of the ways in which you're trying to take responsibility.
Iceland certainly got me thinking. Why is Down syndrome the disability it's socially acceptable to terminate? And how do we come back from that? I've landed back in the UK to the news that the National Screening Committee have made their recommendations.
The most exciting development in pregnancy care for decades. Win on Downs testing. A win. A win. So the Sun are winning. Mums-to-be are to be offered a test for Down syndrome in the NHS after Great Ormond Street Hospital published results showing the test was safe and 99% accurate. Lynn Chitty, blah, blah, blah.
Reading these reports, there's no mention of the impact these tests could have on the Downs community at all. I feel like, just as in Iceland, we're somehow being forgotten about.
Looking at the response of mums to the news, lots of people really upset, crying. I've never been a very angry person, but I'm feeling, I'm feeling quite angry. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm 9. And when I hit 10, there's a really good chance I'll go green, start smashing things up.
The new non-invasive prenatal test was announced to be rolled out last week, lauded by clumsy media as a great step towards eradicating this debilitating condition. We must attend, more importantly than ever, to our use of language.
With the decision on NIPT made, I've come to hear a woman who's been invited to talk to the NHS directly.
Hi, Hayley. Nice to meet you. Hi, Natty.
Hayley Goleniowska has heard hundreds of stories about how Downs diagnoses are delivered through her blog called Downs Side Up. She started writing it to share her positive experiences of living with her daughter Natty.
Post it.
That's so hilarious.
Thank you.
We didn't have an antenatal diagnosis, but I know how fearful I was of Down syndrome when I was pregnant. And if I had trusted the medical professionals, I really don't know what I would have done. I don't know if I'd be sitting here today. Your words count, and the thoughts and beliefs behind them count too.
As NIPT means that more women will receive a Downs diagnosis, Hayley feels there's now a pressing need for that news to be better delivered.
The following are direct quotes to other families, not to us. I can book you in for a termination in the morning. I can't treat you if you continue with this pregnancy. She's really cute, but you don't want another one like that, do you? Our youngest daughter, Natalia, was born on our bathroom floor. What followed is etched in my heart and frozen in time forever. The look of panic on the midwife's face. My brain dared not formulate a question because I was terrified of hearing what I thought was my worst nightmare. What I had been conditioned to fear. Our community midwife wept. And there was no need to be sorry. Natty was not a risk. She's not like a fire or a flood. She certainly was not a page in a medical journal. How I wish I could go back and relive that day, knowing what I now know. Thank you.
Well, that certainly had an impact. Hayley had the entire room of midwives and nurses in tears. And me. It took me back to when Ollie was born. My nurse cried too.
It was very beautiful.
It wasn't until 10 days after Ollie was born that we got our diagnosis.
Ollie?
Yes.
I love being your mummy.
Meh.
But I've spoken to other mothers, and whenever it happens, before or after birth, the feeling of shock is pretty universal. What Hayley's made me realise is that it's such a sensitive time too. How that news is delivered to you, and crucially what information is given, must have a bearing on what women decide to do next.
Antenatal results and choices. Can I help you?
Jane Fisher runs the only counselling charity the NHS currently point pregnant women towards when they get a Downs diagnosis. They're likely to be fielding more and more calls as the new test is rolled out.
How educated are your helpline counsellors about Down syndrome?
I wouldn't pretend for a moment. We've got a small helpline team of 4 of us, and I wouldn't ever pretend, and we wouldn't pretend, that we are absolutely up to date with what living with Down syndrome means in all its aspects.
So let's say to you, I'm worried about how the learning disability is going to affect this baby. What do you then say to me?
Well, we're not going to say you'll be able to cope. We'll say, well, how worried are you? Do you feel you could continue the pregnancy and deal with that? Can you deal with that level of uncertainty, or do you feel you need to end
There's a gap there in the logic, isn't there? So if I say I'm worried about the learning difficulty, you go straight to termination from that. Whereas I'm saying I'm worried about the learning difficulty.
Okay, you're putting your cards on the table, Sally, which is absolutely right, in that we appreciate that people who have children with disabilities or are advocates for people with disabilities really struggle with prenatal diagnosis and decisions to terminate.
I mean, in Iceland, there's now 100% termination. So that suggests to me that the information being given out, which is partly why it's interesting to come and see you, the information being given out is not reflective of how it is to be a person with Down syndrome.
But we're not directive, Sally. We're not pushing people in a direction. We're hearing from them where they are. I guess our angle is it's about choice. And it's not when, and I will say in my 14 years at ARC, I've spoken to hundreds of women who've made the decision to end the pregnancy for Down syndrome. And none of those women make the decision lightly. What they worry about is they can't know exactly how their child's going to be affected. They can't know exactly the level of learning disability or the potential associated health issues. They feel they just can't manage that in their lives or don't want to manage that in their lives. I think that will always be with us.
Having spoken to Jane, I feel I really need to talk to a woman who's made the decision to have a termination herself.
Hi, I'm Sally. Nice to meet you.
Kate's now pregnant again. I'm intrigued to find out what she knew about Down syndrome when she made her decision.
Where should we sit?
Let's go on the couch. Yeah. You've just got to do what you feel is right, haven't you? And,
yeah.
You know, By going down the termination route, we felt that that was the best thing for the baby. I was 25 weeks when I delivered Max.
How does it work with a termination? You say you take a pill?
Yeah, so you take a tablet that starts to break down the placenta, and then I had an injection to stop his heart, so it was instant. 1 minute you could feel him wriggling around, and then the next second he's gone. Sorry.
Got me too. Got me too. It's not an easy subject to discuss, goodness me. You're incredibly brave to discuss it. Do you feel that you had an informed choice about this? You had as much information as you needed?
Yeah, rather than the clinical research and a doctor saying this is what it'll look like. What I was more interested in was family stories, so we looked at clips on YouTube and read news articles and things like that. There were blogs by mums and stuff. So you kind of see some of the difficulties that people are going through. There was one woman that her 5-year-old's still not walking, and he's, you know, very heavy, and she's having to deal with him having fits everywhere, you know. If my child was affected as much as he was, you know, I would feel really guilty about that, having been given the choice. There were only a very few kind of stories at that level. There's loads of positive stuff out there, and it was the positive stuff that kind of really threw me.
Chelsea's won several titles, including winning the Special Olympics National Championship title 4 times and the International Down Syndrome Foundation World Championships title. Chelsea started practicing 16 hours a week.
I think she just puts in that much more work to get where she needs to be. I am unbroken.
I wonder if we have very different reactions to that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think that's...
See, it's very inspirational, and she should be, like, so proud of herself. She's worked so hard to get there, but it was that kind of made me realise how much harder they have to work to kind of reach their goals. That's not what I want for my son. Even the best-case scenario isn't potentially what I want for my son. And, you know, I don't...
Do you mind if I ask you the really difficult question?
Go on.
So you think her life would have been better not happening?
No, not at all. I believe it's every parent's choice to decide what's right for their child. I don't believe it's wrong to bring Down syndrome children into the world. She's got a great quality of life. She's loving life. You know, she's at the top of her game. No, I don't believe that's wrong at all. It's just not what I would want for my child.
She's a reasonable woman, and she's right. She's right that the choice is hers. She's right that the choice is hers. She's right that opportunities for people with Down syndrome are limited. She's right that bringing up a child with Down syndrome requires more effort and more engagement. But I think she's wrong that an increase in choice means greater happiness, because I don't think it does. And I think if you want a happy child, you can guarantee you're having a child that's predisposed to happiness. So anyway, that was what I'm saying to you, Claire, is that I found that much harder than I was anticipating. And yeah, I'd like to go home now.
Kate didn't want a child like mine. That was difficult for me to hear. The thing I seem to be coming up against is this idea of choice. I chose to screen with all 3 of my children. With Ollie, I was given a 1 in 10,000 chance of him having Downs. But back then, if you'd asked me whether I could cope with a child with a disability, I'm not sure whether I would have said yes. Now I'd say that having him in my life has changed me and my family for the better. And that makes me question whether choice is always the wonderful thing it's cracked up to be. leaves me wondering, where are all these individual choices going to take us? What kind of world will Ollie be living in when he's my age? From what I understand, the new Downs test, NIPT, is just one small corner in a huge new field of genetics. So to find out where exactly the science of screening is up to, I've come to the world's biotech hub, California.
The double helix. They really love DNA here.
Just as in Iceland, it turns out things here are moving much faster than I realised.
Come and have a look at what it's called. It can happen now to you, to you. That could not be more appropriate, because here, in what I thought was the future, but is apparently the present, we can screen for tons of other things already. So what's happening to the Down syndrome community could happen to you if you have a history of Alzheimer's in your family, if you have a history of depression in your family, if you have a history of obesity or diabetes in your family. It won't be long before we'll be able to prenatally screen out people like you. And me. Both of us.
I'm going to meet a scientist called Razib Khan. He's the first person in the world to sequence an unborn child's DNA.
Yep. Smooth operator.
Don't worry, it was his son's.
Hey there, Razib. How are you doing? I'm Sally.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
With his unborn child's complete genetic code to hand, Razib was able to screen not only for Down syndrome, but for anything he liked.
Yeah, it was like
Tell me
controversial.
what happened. Tell me what happened. Did you get hauled in?
No, but there was like a big controversy, like in the media, the university, and a lot of people. I mean, I'll give you like.
But you must have known that was going to happen, right?
No, we weren't totally sure. I mean, you have to understand. I know for a fact that within 10 years, most people are going to be doing this. So it might be scary right now, but this is just the future. I just brought it forward into your face a little.
I mean, this is like a really extreme version of not being able to wait till Christmas, right?
Yes, and speak of the devil.
Hello. Hello. Wow, how nice to meet you. Hey there. He's absolutely gorgeous. Congratulations, you're gorgeous.
It's in the genetics.
So what kind of child were you hoping for? What was
the
your
one I got.
But what was your win child? What was your...
Healthy.
Healthy.
Yeah.
How low down the scale do we go before it becomes
I mean, if they had like a mental or developmental disabilities that was severe. I mean,
what
this
about
is like
schizophrenia, something like that, or autism?
I mean, it depends on the severity of these issues.
Can you tell? You can't tell that.
Not right now.
Let's say you had discovered Huntington's.
Yeah.
Presumably, you had this information early. Like,
Yeah.
What
we would
stage
have
in the
terminated.
pregnancy? So, I mean, I don't know if they told you, I'm a parent of a child with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
Down syndrome is presented as the very worst case scenario.
Okay.
My lived experience bears no relation to that.
Okay.
So the whole basis of this discussion is a bit dodgy.
Yeah, but that's your opinion. So other people can have different opinions. People can make their own choices. No one, hopefully, is being forced into making any decision they don't want, right?
I mean, do you think that we're going to look at people eliminating, ending pregnancies?
Some people will do that. Some of it, obviously, it seems pernicious to me, but that's just my opinion as well. Science has no morality, right? Science just tells you. You can do what you want with the science.
Razib analysed his son's genome using his laptop at home 2 years ago. He had to leave it processing the data for 2 weeks solid. But even since then, DNA sequencing has become far more accessible. In America, there are already companies who will do it for you for under $1,000. The scientist, arguably at the forefront of this revolution, is George Church. He pioneered the method used to sequence the first human genome, and over his 40-year career has become known as the godfather of genetics.
I might leave my toy microscope I bought for my child in the car, because that might look like I'm
like not a serious, not a serious person.
I've come to Harvard Medical School in Boston to meet him. Maybe he can tell me whether science does, or should have, any morality.
You know, we're making this film about Down syndrome in the prenatal screening program. It seems that there's going to be many, many more things that we're going to be able to screen for in the very near future. So I don't know how, I mean, the genie's out of the bottle. I don't know how one even begins to create ethics around this kind of thing.
Well, ethics changes from year to year. You know, I'm sure that if you had talked about the 1 million people a year that die in cars back at the turn of the century, we might not have cars now, because that would be an unacceptable outcome. With Down syndrome, I don't think it's so much of Genie being out of the bag as just parents who exert their will. And that depends on what they see on television. In other words, if they see lots of happy family with Down syndrome kids, then they might say, hey, I want that. But I think that if anything, it goes the opposite direction. People will not only choose the way their child will be, but when the child grows up, the child will change themselves genetically. And it's unlikely that a child will say, hey, I'd like to be a Down syndrome kid.
What do you think the future holds for us?
It's all about education.
Yeah.
It's not the technology that's the problem.
No.
It's the societal pressures and the market forces that are at work.
Yes.
If you want to instill certain values, spread the word that these are actually valuable members of society, valuable in a very broad sense.
I'm here today not only to make a case for Down syndrome, but to spread the idea that all lives matter.
Actually, I've made contact with a person who's already been telling the world just how valuable life with Down syndrome is.
It is not a disease. You can't catch it from anyone. It is just something that happens.
Her name is Karen Gaffney, and she's the world's best-known advocate for people with Down syndrome. But with the godfather of genetics words ringing in my ears. Oh no, I'm crying again. There's just more riding on this meeting than I thought.
It feels that, like, even if this particular encounter isn't life and death is hanging around in the air. You know, that maybe there'll be someone who watches this program who decides to have a baby they wouldn't otherwise have had, or maybe there'll be someone who watches this program who might have had the baby and decides they won't. It all just... I've got an overactive imagination, basically.
Karen and her mum Barbara have agreed to meet me before I leave Boston.
Hi. Sorry, I was staring out the window. Hi there. Hi. Nice to meet you. I'm Sally.
Hi, Sally. I'm Barb.
Hi, Barb. Hi. Hi there. How are you, Karen?
How's your son Ollie doing?
Oh, thank you. He's doing all right. You've swum the channel.
Yes, I have.
That must have been horrible.
Yes, yeah.
And have you had good response from that TED Talk?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see how anyone could watch it and keep very bigoted ideas of Down syndrome. You had done such an amazing job.
I think she was able to
change minds.
Change minds and change hearts and just at least get people to question.
Yeah. When did you realise you had Down syndrome? Do you remember what age you were, or...?
I think I was between 6 and 7 years old when my mom told me I had Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And how it just takes me longer to learn things than it does other people.
Because I wasn't quite sure whether to tell Ollie or not, or whether to tell his brothers. And I started off thinking, well, I just want it to be normal, so we'll tell them. And then my husband said recently to the youngest, who's 4, he said, Ollie just finds it difficult to understand sometimes, and he gets angry. And the little one said, like you, Dad.
That's great.
And it's like, yeah, you know, we all find it difficult to understand sometimes, and we all get angry sometimes.
And this is what humanity is all about.
Yeah.
They're blended into the fabric.
Yes.
They're all part of the fabric of humanity, not separate. And I think that's what we need to see.
So there we go. It's the end. You made it. I promised you some interpretive dance, didn't I? If we're heading towards a world where we choose more and more who gets born, I feel like we really need to think about what it is that we value. And as our powers of choice get greater and greater, who are those people that society might leave behind?
There's great value in things not being perfect. There's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. And the imperfections are where humanity is most visible.
I guess I'll leave you with that thought. Something to chew on anyway.
I love you, Mum.
I love you too. I love you so much.